But anyways, welcome to this session of some of the trainings that we'll be providing. Um, Thank you for taking the time from your busy schedules to participate in this training. The idea behind providing this training is for you to actually gain some insights to some of the issues that we have been asked to review from the surveys that we had sent out. And based on the responses from you all as to what is it that you would like to hear from us, or what is it that you would like to know more about, is when we are selecting these topics for these monthly departmental buyers meetings. So please make sure to submit your survey results at the end when it's sent out to you, so that we have a better idea of what topics you would like us to share with you all during these meetings. So please make sure to do that. Um, Again, we will be basically going over the requisition overview, PO amend overview. We will be sharing some of the best practices with regards to these topics. And then we will have a resource slide that you can have when we send you this presentation. That is a quick reference for you to use if you have any questions. And then, of
Good,
course, we will take the Q&A at the end of the session.
great.
Go to the next slide, Mike. All right, so just again, providing you with some things that you need to be aware of. Essentially, we wanted to make sure that anybody who is doing any kind of procurement for UCI has to recognize that us being a public university, it is every individual who is actually placing a requisition or a purchase order to be aware of the procurement laws, rules, regulations, and policies. Obviously, we are here to help, and we try to stay on top of all these policies, and our team does. But it also is up to you to make sure that you are aware of these policies if you're going to be making any purchases on behalf of the university. For that, there is the UCOP policy called BUS 43. If you're not familiar with it, it's on the UCOP website. It's very easy to find. If you just type UCOP BUS 43 in your website browser, that will show up. We also have the UCI 707-10. That is a subset of the BUS 43, which if you haven't read yet, and if you're new to purchasing, it may not hurt for you to just kind of browse through that policy as well. And then, of course, the California Public Contract Code is a very big document. I don't expect you all to read that, but there are certain requirements of the Public Contract Codes that we are supposed to follow. So just be aware of that. For example, the $100,000 threshold at which point we are supposed to do a public bid and an RFP for making the purchase is part of the Public Contracts Code. Also wanted to make sure that you are aware that there is a delegation of authority that's been passed on by the president of UC, the chancellors, and that's redelegated to the individuals at campuses for different purchases. And just so you are aware, the delegation of authority to sign any legal documents on behalf of UCI is delegated to the central procurement office. And so the departments do not have that authority to sign any agreements. So please do not do so. It is also a violation of the federal and state laws and our policies for you to make any purchases without getting the necessary approvals and documents in advance. This is why we don't like when people do after the fact POs, because that really is going against the policy. And you are also personally responsible for any cost that you may have incurred for making purchases without getting prior approvals. So be very mindful of that. Many times people submit disbursement vouchers for reimbursements, but if it's against the policy, you may be taking the risk of spending the money without getting reimbursed. So just be very mindful of that. This slide more or less tells you the kind of responsibilities that you have. And I'm going to go through this list so that when somebody who is having difficulties or is disabled can also hear what's on the slide. So essentially what it says is that you are supposed to know what you want to purchase, why you need it, the purpose for it, when do you need it, where it's to be delivered, and how much you're willing to pay for it, essentially saying and making sure that you have the budget to make that purchase. If there are any documents required for signatures, we would hope that you are aware of those documents that are needed. And we need to make sure that there's the authority to approve the expenses, which is basically your fiscal officer in your department, and where to keep the records and documents of your purchases so that if there's an audit, you'll be able to provide those documentations. You will realize that on this slide, nowhere does it say that you are actually responsible for determining where to source these products from. That is really where the procurement team really comes in and provides you with the right resources to make your purchases. So we really would recommend that you use and work closely with the procurement office to help determine where to make the purchases from and who to source these products or services from. We really want to change the culture where we use contracted suppliers to the extent possible. And if not, there is a small business first policy that's being rolled out to help promote small business. And only when we don't have those two options should we be looking at somebody who is outside those norms. So just wanted to plug that in as we look forward to additional, mandates probably coming from the top in terms of where we should be buying our products from. And now I would like to introduce to you the Strategic Initiatives and Communications Manager, Doreen Tannenbaum, and she and her team will walk you through the training.
Thank you, Snehal. Hi, I'm Doreen Tannenbaum, and I'd like to introduce my team, Shauna Neiswanger, our Training and Communications Assistant, as well as our Small Business Coordinator, and Lily Zaprianoff, our Procurement Assistant and Sustainability Coordinator. Some of the things we're in charge of are the procurement website, our newsletter, the help desk, training materials, and two important UCOP initiatives, small business and sustainable purchasing. We're currently working on the Small Business First program with other UC campuses to provide contracting and procurement opportunities with certified small businesses, micro businesses, and disabled veteran business enterprises. This policy was established to increase the utilization of these businesses in alignment with UC's sustainability goals and overall mission. We hope to roll out this important initiative in March, and we'll have additional details for you soon. You can find our training section filled with step-by-step guides on the footer of the procurement.uci.edu website. You'll also find interactive courses on UCLC. We are always available to set up one-on-one or group training sessions if you need further assistance. Please contact Shauna to set that up at shauna.n@uci.edu. And you may wonder, how do I determine which purchasing method to use? On our website, under the Procurement tab, please click on Purchasing Methods from the drop-down to access this useful tool. You can tab through and determine whether you should use UCI Buy, PAL Card, KFS Requisition, or set up a reoccurring PO. So next is our requisition overview video. Please note that today's training videos were demonstrated in the KFS test site, and many of the fields were pre-populated in the interest of time. This is a very high-level overview, and if needed, please reach out to Shauna for more in-depth training session. Maggie, can you please play the video?
Yes, I'm getting that up right now.
Maggie, can you please share the volume?
My apologies. I thought I already had that set up. I think it's a little too fast. Oh, yeah, that's why.
first step to entering a requisition is to go to the ZOP portal. Make sure you're logged in if not already. Select the Finances KFS tab. Go down to the KFS Purchasing Portlet and select Requisition to open your new document. At the top, your document header will give you everything you'll need to help retrieve and track your requisition in the future. Please make a note of your document number for future reference, and your requisition number will populate upon your first save. For today's example, we're going to be ordering pipettes. Our first tab we're going to look at is the Document Overview tab. An asterisk on the document fields will indicate it is requirement to fill out. I have pre-populated, for the sake of this training video, the fields already, but we will go over all that you will need to address. The first field is the description, where we want to make sure that we write something brief, but something that's easy for the next viewer to understand, whoever's going to get this next. You can use the explanation field to notate any pertinent information to the contract manager. Example could be attach quote details or indicating if it's an after-the-fact PO. Next, we've got our Delivery tab, and you'll see that I already have my building information already defaulted. If you don't have a default, or you want to change your default address of where you want to deliver to, you can use the little search icons. These are throughout the document, and each time you see one, that is a searchable field. So you can go ahead and search out your new building, or if it's your first time, go ahead and bring that building in and set it as a default. Make sure you have the room number. If there is no room, it will just type no room with no space in between no room. The deliver to will automatically default to you as the initiator, but again, that can be changed to whoever you want to be reflected on the deliver to address. Next is the vendor tab. I went ahead and did my search and brought in my vendor I'm looking for. And the vendor fields are populated once I brought that vendor in with all of their onboarded profile information. The notes to vendor field is something that's handy to convey anything, any special instructions or anything you need to the vendor, or in this case, we're referencing a contract number. There could be a customer number as well you might have on hand, and this is where you can go ahead and notate all that information. Next is the Items tab. The item type will always default to quantity taxable, and for our example today, we will keep it at quantity taxable. As for the quantity, I want to go ahead and order 3, and the unit of measure is each. If you're not sure what your unit of measure abbreviation you will need is, you can go ahead and use the search icon to look that up. Please enter the catalog number if applicable, and you would go ahead and enter the commodity code, which is something that is a little tricky for people most of the time to find. So this is another one of those cases where we encourage you to keep a cheat sheet of the most commonly used commodity codes. Again, when searching, do partial word searches and do asterisk, partial word asterisk. In your description field, you want to get as detailed as possible, and you can refer to your quote or whatever online information you received as far as the description to help identify what this item is. You put the unit cost in here. And once the unit cost is entered and we add by pressing the plus button, you'll see that the extended line cost goes ahead and populates. The next thing we want to do is add our account information. So we'll click on this little show accounting lines icon, the little dollar symbol on it, and here's our accounting line. My account is already defaulted, but you can go ahead and search for that, or you can free type it as you need if you are changing between accounts. After we save this, you will have the option to save that account number as a default. There are optional fields such as subaccount, subobject, project, org ref ID that can be utilized to help identify things on the general ledger, but that is at your fiscal officer's discretion. So what we'll need here is an object code, and again, I have my little cheat sheet here, and it does recall, depending on what browser you're in, as you can maybe notice drop downs, remember object codes you've used in the past, but it's always best to keep a little cheat sheet, or you can do your search. Again, partial word search is best. At the end here of the line, you have it defaulted to 100%. Normally, if you're just using one account, that's all you have to enter. You don't have to enter a dollar amount. If you want to split fund it, though, you can either split fund it in percentage or in dollar amount. The next step, we'll go ahead and add this line item. And now our accounting line is in the requisition, and the next step we'll go to is the additional institutional info tab. And this just pre-populates to the initiator's information again. This is for internal use only. It's just to use as a secondary contact in case there's any questions on this order. But again, it can be changed if you want to go ahead and mention someone else's name here in this field. Next is the Notes and Attachments tab. You would go ahead and do a brief description of what you're uploading as far as backup documentation, or if you want to just go ahead and add any additional notations for anyone who's viewing this document for future reference. You would just go ahead and choose the file and hit the Add button to go ahead and add your backup. Then the last and final step is we will calculate and submit. And you'll see that at the top, your status has now changed to en route, and the requisition is in process because it is routed to the next person in line. There are a few optional approvers, but typically it will go to your fiscal officer for the last and final approval. Once that's done, this requisition status will turn to final. And that's all there is to adding a requisition.
Thank you. So some things to know. If you don't know the object or project code, your content reviewer or fiscal officer will know what to insert. Otherwise, you can find it on KFS in the decision support portlet. Also, you can take advantage of contracted rates by utilizing UCI Buy. Most of the requisition tabs will be pre-populated, streamlining the requisition. Good note is if you're still ordering for home delivery, you will not be able to utilize these services, and more information for work from home is located on our COVID-19 page, accessible on our website by clicking on the Procurement Services Operational Updates in the orange box found on every page on our site. It's also referenced later in our resources. Next is the Amending the Accounting Lines video.
To amend the accounting lines on a PO, go to the Zob portal, go to the Finances KFS tab, go down to the Purchasing portlet, expand the Custom Document Search, and go to Purchase Orders and select. This will open your PO Custom Document Search. Enter your PO number, select Search, and then go ahead and click on the document ID. So once in the purchase order, you want to check a few things first. Make sure that it's open. It is in the open status. And then double check if any payments have been made against the PO. In this case, there has not been. So what we can do is choose the Amend Accounting Lines Only button. Enter our reason. And select Yes. This will then give us a new document number, but the same purchase order will remain. We'll navigate down back to Current Items. And then what we can do is expand the Show All Accounting Lines. Go to the accounting line and just type over the account and enter the account that you would like to change this to. You can make any other changes here if necessary. You can change the object code, the percentage, and the split. You can add that. You can do any of those things for the accounting line. And the Amend Accounting Lines Only is only in this situation if there's no amount that's been paid. So we'll go ahead and calculate and then submit to go ahead and send this to our fiscal officer for the next review. Once it's finalized and approved by the fiscal officer, the contract manager will then go ahead and do the final approval, and the amendment is complete in the system. The status will change from changed in process to final. A second example would be is if there was an amount paid against the line item. Here we have $2,500 paid out of $5,500. So the first thing I want to do is scroll down to the view payment history, make sure there is no pending payments, because that will prevent us from successfully entering a amendment. So because of the payment, and as I mentioned before, amend accounting lines only, it can only be used when no payment has been made. We'll only be able to use the amend button. We'll click on that, enter our reason, and click yes. All right. Again, we've got a new document number, and the PO number will remain the same. So we will navigate down to the current items area of the items tab. And what we'll want to do is, because we don't, the remaining encumbrance is on the old account, the $2,500 has been paid out of, and we don't want that to go forward, we'll want to reduce the unit cost down to the amount paid. So we'll put $2,500 in here. And then we want to go up and enter a new line item. So we'll want to make it look just as the other line did. So we'll do quantity non-taxable. We can copy the commodity code, copy the description, and then we'll put the remaining balance in the unit cost of $3,000. So here we'll go ahead and hit the green plus button. And then we will navigate down to line 2 and select the Show Accounting Lines button and enter the account number we'd like to use. If you forget the object code, you can always show the line 1 if you want it to remain the same, and get that object code from there. So we want this to be 100% on this one account, but you do have the option to split fund any way you want. And we'll go ahead and hit the green plus button. Just like before, we will calculate and submit. The document was successfully submitted. It will go again to your fiscal officer, and then it will go back to the contract manager for final approval.
So just a reminder, step-by-step instructions are found on the training section at the bottom of the procurement.uci.edu website. Things to know for the PO amendments are to first check to see if the status of the PO is open prior to amending. Also check for any pending payments before beginning an amendment. And if you're amending to use federal funds, you must use the federal requirements. Our next video is how to add additional funds.
To amend a PO to add additional funds, go ahead and go to the ZOP portal, go to the Finances KFS tab, go down to the KFS Purchasing Portlet, expand the Custom Documents search, and click on Purchase Orders. Enter your PO number and select Search. Go ahead and select your document number. And the first thing we'll want to do in the PO is just double check if there's any pending payments. I see that there's nothing in the paid amount, so we can safely assume that there's no pending payments entered in the system yet. In this case, because we are adding additional funds, we'll want to use the Amend button. We'll click the Amend, and add our message. And select yes. In the Items tab, the current line exists for year 1 in this example, and we want to add year 2. A little shortcut, because they are very similar in the way we're going to fill it out. I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste, but I will make sure that I want to first change the item type to no quantity non-taxable, as it is here. I can copy and paste the commodity code and the description. Just make sure to update it to year 2. And change the dates. All right. Add our unit cost for how much we want for the year. It doesn't have to be identical, however much you anticipate on spending or want to add for the additional funds. We will make it the same and select the green plus button. There we go. It might take a minute for your line to show up. So now we have 2 lines, and we will go ahead and select the little icon to show the accounting line. We will add our account. Our object code. And put it at 100%. Click the green plus button to add. If there are any additional backup documentations that are available, go ahead and add the note text backup and choose the file to add the information into the notes and attachments section. After you're all done, go ahead and calculate and submit. This will indicate that it was successfully submitted and your change is in process. It will then route to the fiscal officer, and then it will be finalized by the contract manager. To amend a
Thank you, Shauna, for creating these videos for us. I'm going to turn this over to Saroj Siganporia, our strategic sourcing and procurement manager, to go over some best practices.
Sorry, Karen's going to talk on this one, the slide.
Kent, can you please unmute yourself?
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for attending. My name is Kent Schofield, and I'm a senior buyer here at the university. If you spend any time here, you probably know my name as well as the other buyers. We're going to talk about some of the best practices that we'd like to see used when doing these requisitions. Commodity codes. I saw in the questions that somebody asked, where are the commodity codes? We'll have a list available, but if you go to where the commodity code is and click on the little magnifying glass icon, you'll get right into the commodity code source in the requisitions and gives you every commodity code we have, and it's pretty robust when searching for things. So that's your first job. But we would like everyone to use the correct commodity codes or get it as close to the item that you can, because internally, requisitions that are routed to central buyers are based on the commodity codes. So putting the correct commodity code in there ensures that the correct buyer will be helping you out with your purchase order. Also, when submitting a requisition, please include a valid quote. If it's expired, just ask the supplier for an updated one and attach it in there. Even if you've already attached another one, I think there's endless digital area in there. You can put as many in as you want, but please get us the most a valid one. When you're doing a recurring purchase order, a recurring purchase order is one where you're receiving an item that you're going to be billed with on a regular basis. Copiers are a good example of that. The lease payments on a copier are once a month, like clockwork. That would be a recurring payment PO. And when you put a recurring payment PO together, please include the start and end date of the actual service, not the start and end date of the PO, but the start and end date of the service that you're working on. We track that in the system, and it helps us get an idea of where things really are. The explanation field on the very first tab, it's up in the right-hand corner. That's a good place to communicate with the contract manager. If you have a requisition that will be for a consultant, make sure you put it up there in the consulting PO in that explanation field, because the contracts people look for that, and it helps us route the POs correctly. Also in the explanation field, it'd be good if you go ahead and explain as much about the PO as you can. Doesn't have to be super detailed, but at least let the buyer know some of the highlights of the purchase order you're doing, especially if it's already been placed. It'd be nice for us to know without having to look. Also, if you're going to submit something for payment or want it to get paid, make sure that all of the goods and services have been received completely before rendering any pay, or before allowing accounts payable to pay it. And that's the end of that.
Patrick, can you speak to this?
The next slide is for software, and that will be handled by Patrick Coe.
Oh, hi everyone. My name is Patrick Coe. I'm one of the senior buyers and procurement services, handle primarily the IT and AV commodities, and most of you have probably seen me in some of these videos. And today I'm going to briefly go over some of the best practices, as it pertains to software purchases. As many of you know, at the beginning of July of last year, procurement services, in partnership with OIT Security, we updated the process for procuring software. And as many of you have been completing and attaching the software procurement questionnaire to the requisitions, we are still finding numerous requisitions where it is not being attached. And just want to remind everyone that this form is required on all new purchases, along with renewals, and also renewals primarily because we need to determine if the use case for the software has changed at all. Not including it will further delay the procurement process. For those of you who are not familiar with the form, the original intent of the form was to provide procurement and OIT more visibility into what was being purchased, what the software does, where it's hosted, what access the supplier has, what risks involved are involved in using the software, along with what type of sensitive data is being shared or stored. If you missed our training sessions from last July where we covered this, they are available to review on the procurement website. The software procurement questionnaire is also located on our site as well. If you have a valid agreement already in place, we ask that you include that as an attachment in the requisition, along with any other approvals, past emails, or any backup documentation from prior purchases. Usually what I see when I get a requisition for software is typically at most a copy of the quote without any historical data or reference. And This does make it very difficult for us to search in prior POs and recall just what occurred in prior years. The more information you provide us, the quicker we can work on and issue your POs. If this is a renewal, please note that in the explanation box on top. Third, as Snehal mentioned at the beginning of the session, we wanted to stress that any agreements, whether on UC template or on supplier paperwork, the majority of the campus does not have designation or legal authority to sign them. They should always be routed through procurement and the contracts team. In most cases, we will want to push for the use of our UC contract templates over the third-party agreements, which typically every software provider normally gives us. If any department signatures are required, procurement services will obtain them via DocuSign. Fourthly, once the software procurement questionnaire is completed and it's determined that security review may be needed, it is the responsibility of the departments to initiate this review with either main campus OIT security, or if you've identified HIPAA or PHI on the software procurement questionnaire, then through the medical center IT team. Their info can be located on our website. Lastly, I did want to highlight the main commodity codes for software, and I believe there are only these 5. We do have numerous requisitions coming in where they are properly, we have the incorrect commodity codes. So for those of you who haven't seen these or don't understand which ones to pick, I just wanted to go over them briefly. The first one being 811-11500, software or hardware engineering. An example of this would be, hiring a company or supplier to develop software. The second one, 8111-2200, software maintenance and support. And I typically see this one when a department owns a particular software, but they do have to pay annual fees for software support and any updates to the software. The third one, 432-3000, software. This one I see used quite often, and it's not used properly. This commodity code should only be used when you're actually receiving a physical copy of the software. But most of the software that we purchase nowadays is a downloadable license. So for the most part, you will probably see these last two or use these last two commodity codes. 8111-2500, software licenses. These are any type of software licenses that you're purchasing that are not cloud related. As mentioned in our previous software, we did include a new commodity code here that does pertain to cloud, and it's 811-6200, services with a cloud-based component. This is software that is either hosted or has data stored in the cloud. If you check off the box on the software procurement questionnaire that's hosted in the cloud or both locally and in the cloud, you'll want to use this commodity code. I will now hand this over to Helen Chang, our Equipment Surplus Property and KFS Asset Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. This to continue of the best practices. So if you're going to purchase equipment items, so please itemize any equipment items that over $5,000 into separate line item and select purchase type, quantity, and taxable. This way, when the document route to the equipment reviewer to review your capital asset purchase, we will assign the assign the property tag, ID tag ahead of time on the requisition. It'll carry over into the purchase order document. The next one is that when you do the POA, the purchase order amendment, you're changing from the non-federal fund account to the federal account. So please make sure to attach all the federal fund requirements, such as UC SSPR form and at least three quotes to the POA documents, notes, and attachment. And that way we can continue to review your POA and approve it as appropriate. Thank you. And next bullet, I will turn over to Snehal.
Thank you, Helen. So there was one other last point on the previous slide that talked about submitting requisitions without having a vendor ID in the system. We do understand that with Payment Works being rolled out as our onboarding platform, there could be a little bit of a delay in onboarding a supplier. And on the other hand, our contracts team is prioritizing review of the contracts for those that already have a requisition in the system with an unapproved PO. And so I can understand the departments kind of getting in a bind that their contracts are not getting reviewed because the vendor is not onboarded. So we just want to let you know that in situations like that, you could actually submit a requisition without having the vendor ID already in the system. The only word of caution on my end is you want to be extremely careful when you do that, because if there is a conflict of interest, or if the vendor shows up in a sanctions list, and if for whatever reason we cannot onboard the supplier, now we have gone through the whole process of getting the requisition in place, the PO being generated, and our contracts team reviewing the contracts when the supplier itself cannot be even onboarded. So that is the only caution I would provide when we say that you can technically submit a requisition in the system without actually having the supplier onboarded. That is not a recommended practice. I would not ask you to do that on a routine basis, but only as an exception, we may allow that to happen. Now I'll turn it back to Doreen to talk about the resources.
Thank you, and thank you to all of our presenters today. Here is a list of resources referenced in today's training. Again, the slides and video will be on our website as well as emailed to you later this week. And now we're going to open the floor up for some questions. Please feel free to type in your questions in the chat or raise your hand and unmute yourself when called on.
So Doreen, I see that there are quite a few questions that have already been entered in the system. So I will, if everybody's okay, I'll kind of try to prioritize. Some may take too long to answer that we may have to defer. So we will try to hit as many questions as we possibly can. We only actually scheduled this for an hour, so we only have 12 more minutes.
Snehal, can you just please recite the question before answering it? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I think Kent already answered the question regarding where can we find a list of commodity codes and object codes for our reference. Just for everybody's understanding, the fiscal officers essentially should be aware of the object codes that should be used for a particular purchase. The commodity codes, as I mentioned, Kent went through where you can find it. It's on our procurement website, where you should be able to go into the procurement tab and get the list of commodity codes. I know Barry had asked a question, how are we using the commodity codes? The commodity codes are actually used to identify where the PO will go, to which contracts manager, essentially which buyer on the central procurement team will be receiving this PO for them to review and approve. So we have our procurement buyers assigned to various commodities, and that's how we are tracking. We also utilize that for a lot of reporting and analysis that we perform on many of the spend that we have on campus. So that's how we use the commodity codes. For the step-by-step information, please share the steps in writing how to amend a PO. I believe that information is available in our detailed training guides on our procurement website. So Marbell, if you go there and cannot find it or having difficulties following that, please feel free to reach out to Shauna. She will be more than happy to have a one-on-one session with you to help you walk you through every step of amending a PO and in different ways that you may need to. Is there a way to amend the vendor in the PO if no payments have been made yet to avoid having to submit a brand new requisition? So I think replacing or changing the vendor on a PO is not something I believe we can do.
Can I answer that one, Snehal?
Yes, please, Shauna.
Okay. Hi. We can only change the vendor on a PO if it's a division. So as an example, your vendor number is 1234-0 and you want to change it to 1234-1 and it has a different location or a different name of a division of the company, that is acceptable. But if it's 567 9 or 8 or whatever different vendor number, then you cannot unfortunately do that. You have to reissue a new PO.
Correct.
Requisition into a PO.
Correct. Thank you, Shauna. I think Jessica's question is very long. I'll skip that for now. If you have time, I will come back to that. Tom, your question about copier lease, having an RPO agreement, if we need to amend the account information, do you suggest doing this option? And can't answer that. Shown earlier in creating a new current line item, that is correct. That's the way you do that. And Kent already answered to saying yes, that's how you do it.
Snehal, the only thing I'll add to that is that it's probably one of the most complicated amendments due to the fact that there's a quantity involved in tax as well. So I'd be happy to try to walk through anyone who runs into those personally. They're a little bit more complex to teach.
Correct. Not only that, there already have been payments made on some of these items on prior months. So that also adds a little bit of complications. So yeah, Tom, you may kind of one-on-one get more insights. If the software is a monthly purchase, do we keep completing software questionnaire on a file for a year, or do we complete one each month? We do not need to complete the same questionnaire every month. If you have payments happening month after month, it's the first time that you are purchasing a software that you actually need to provide the questionnaire, just so that we understand and know that there is no additional requirements with regards to Appendix DS or things of that nature.
Snehal, can I chime in? Sorry.
Please.
So if software is a monthly purchase and this is on a PO, then, as Ken mentioned, we recommend that you put this on a blanket PO if you know you will be making monthly payments. That way you'll only have to attach one copy of the form.
Correct.
So, sorry, it's Jennifer. So it might be a question maybe on a PAL card when their monthly payment is being charged. So I don't expect everyone to attach that every month for those. So I think if you just did it to the beginning of the first payment, then if there's any kind of audit issues, we will go through the audit trails to find them. So if that was a question.
Yes. Thanks, Jennifer. Rosalie asked, how do you know if an invoice will be automatically paid from an open PO, or do we always need to send an email to AP to pay for an invoice, especially for service? Sometimes the PO has been open for a while and invoice has not been paid. So essentially, the POs should be getting paid when the invoices are sent to accounts payable. They obviously are going to look at the payment terms, and based on the payment terms, the invoice is supposed to be paid. If the PO amount, the invoice amount is greater than $10,000, I believe AP asks fiscal officers to confirm that the goods have been received or the service has been received before the invoice gets paid. Those are probably the times when things get stuck, where it's expected for the fiscal officers to actually acknowledge receipt of the goods and services. And if they are not aware of it, the PO could be just sitting there, or the invoice could be just sitting there without getting paid. Again, yes.
Sorry, just a misnomer. There is no such thing as an automatic payment from an open PO. AP, right. You have to send an invoice every single time. Thanks.
That is correct. Yes, I am assuming that the invoice has been sent to AP and then it's getting stuck. But you're right, Melissa. There's no such thing as automatic payments without an invoice. Rosalie, I hope this answered your question. If we didn't, you can come back and we can help you get that sorted out. I'm going fast only because of time constraints. Maybe next time we'll keep this session for an hour and a half so we can address and answer everybody's questions. Maybe that should be a question on the survey, Maggie, if people would prefer an hour-long session or hour and a half, because we always seem to run out of time, which is good because that means shows people do have interest and they want to know more, and there is value in this sessions that we are scheduling. Claire is asking, do we complete a software procurement questionnaire for UC contracted vendors like SHI? So again, if you are using a contracted supplier for any purchases, that's completely different from what software you're purchasing. Just because we have a contracted supplier does not mean that you're free to purchase any software that they may have available. Patrick, would that be an accurate statement?
That is correct. The only ones that are fully vetted for the most part, most of the software purchases that we do make through SHI is for Adobe products and Microsoft, and they've been listed as an authorized reseller, and we do have agreements in place for those particular software.
Correct. And then you don't need to fill out the software procurement questionnaire.
Correct.
Right. Thank you, Patrick. Lynn, you will receive a copy of this presentation that has the references. And yep. Okay, we answered the question about monthly subscriptions. Thelma says, will procurement have a sourcing expert for human tissue questions in the future? Let's talk offline, Thelma. And I know that there are new requirements coming up, and we may have to get ourselves more equipped with more commodities and purchases. Kathy, our goal is to have these meetings on a monthly basis so that we can have more topics that we can cover for people, because there seems to be interest. But again, that's the thing that we want to continue to ask people during our surveys as to they like the frequency. Do we want it on a monthly basis? Is it too long? Or too much? And again, how long this meeting should be. I think 1 hour, many people are able to spare. If you are willing to spare an hour and a half, we'll be more than happy to extend these meetings to an hour and a half. Lynn is saying she would like to get a tutorial for sure. Absolutely will be available for you, Lynn. You're more than welcome to reach out to Shauna and she'll be able to help you with that.
Absolutely.
And of course, you can always look at the bottom of our procurement website, and there's a training section there, and you can access everything you need in that section. Okay.
Shauna, Karen just posted, is there any way to edit an item's taxable, non-taxable information on a UCI by requisition? Maybe Barbara, you want to take that?
So UCI buy essentially pulls in the commodity codes automatically. So if the commodity code in KFS deems it as taxable, then it'll pull it in that way. So it's pretty hard set. We won't be able to change commodity codes on items.
The only amendment allowed on a UCI buy order is the accounting change, an accounting amendment.
Thank you. And then Allison has asked, if we enter a requisition without a vendor number entered in the requisition, do we just go and do an amend on the requisition to enter the vendor number? Is that accurate, Shauna? I think that's how they would go ahead and amend the requisition.
Actually, so the contract manager will receive the unapproved PO without the vendor, and the PO cannot be completed until the vendor is actually onboarded. So it will be at the contract manager's in their action list to go ahead and complete that for you on your behalf once it is completed. So just make sure you let the contract manager know the minute you're aware that the vendor has been onboarded with the vendor information.
Thank you, Shauna. And Jessica, I'll come back to your question You asked if we have multiple products we are buying from the same supplier and they are both on different accounts. I believe you can have multiple line items for multiple different products and assign a particular account number for each line item so that it's appropriately charged to the correct account. Shauna, can you verify that for me?
Yeah, so if I understand, it is best if you have the items that you're buying and you want to put it on different funds, or even if the object code is different from each other for some reason, then or project code or anything else you want to add, then yes, you would just split fund it on that one line. I think that answers the question, if I understood it correctly.
Well, if there are two different items they are purchasing from the same supplier and each item is going to a different account, they can definitely do that. That's no problem, right?
Right. So you would do one line on one account and then change the accounting line on the other account, on the other line item. Yes,
right.
Yes, absolutely.
There's no reason to have multiple requisitions and POs with the same supplier for different types of products.
No.
Right. Jessica, I hope that answered your question. Okay, good. I think I covered all the questions that were put in the chat. If I missed anything, please go ahead and raise your hand or speak about it now. If not, let's go to the closing. I just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to attend this session. I know this was very high level. You probably didn't get some of the answers you may have wanted with the depth, but it was a challenge for us to actually do a live demo with going into KFS and walking you through that in a short period of time. If we are going to ask this question in the survey that we are going to send out, that if you are actually interested in having a detailed session of walking you through all the steps in KFS, that will probably require 2 hours. It will be a 2-hour training, and please submit your response in the surveys. And based on the survey responses, we will most definitely schedule that if that is what you really would like to do. Okay. Other than that, again, thank you everybody for participating, joining, showing the interest, and staying connected to the procurement world. We will think of other topics based on your feedback as to what we want to present in the next upcoming sessions. So please provide those feedback to the team and let us know how we can be of more help and service. Okay. Thank you all and have a great afternoon and stay safe.